Hello, good morning, and welcome to Understanding Spirit. I'm your host, Alan Cox, and it's a beautiful sunny day in Staffordshire, and I hope it's just as glorious where my good friend and colleague David Parry is on that beautiful Isle of Bute. Good morning, David.
Morning, Alan. Yeah, I mean, Staffordshire, UK, of course, because we're quite proud of that. And yeah, it's a
That's right.
glorious day. It's a glorious day. I mean,
Yes,
we've had
indeed.
a glorious week up here. It sort of brings home the fact that we live in an international beauty spot because they all come here to get drunk. Why don't you just sod off and do it somewhere else?
Really, is
Um,
that what they do?
yeah, I mean,
Seriously,
yeah,
you
seriously. I mean, I can't see the
you find
point.
yourself invaded?
Yeah, I mean it
No.
happens. It happens every summertime, but I can't see the point. I mean, if you're drunk, you won't appreciate being here anyway. So why not save money and just get
Yeah,
drunk where you come from? But anyway, yeah, the ferries were packed
true, isn't it?
yesterday. The ferries were packed yesterday.
Because you've got a bird's eye view of the ferry terminal there, haven't you?
We
See all the
overlook
comings and going.
a yacht club and the ferry terminal. It's all very scenic and very pretty.
Yes.
More like a Scandinavian ferry terminal than an ugly British one. So I imagine that because we're not in
It's
ugly
lovely.
England.
And I would imagine place to be, but it
Well,
seems
I mean,
like it has to be like in autumn and winter.
yeah, I mean, with this is the Hebrides, so
Yes.
you don't necessarily plan to come here in the winter. Not because in Butte we've got the worst storms ever. I mean, up the sea a bit, that is true, but of course, as I keep saying, there's a microclimate here. So
Yes.
we actually don't get mostly the terrible weather that the Highlands and Islands are renowned for at that time of year. Mostly we're protected by the hills and the Gulf Stream. But at times like this in the summertime, I mean, it's absolutely idyllic. It's beautiful, which is why I don't mind people coming here and enjoying it. It just makes no sense to me. Why are they coming here and not? I mean, by definition, you notice less and less as you get more and more drunk. So what's the point?
Yes, of course. Yeah, I agree. Because I know originally when you and Dan were looking to move up to Scotland, you was looking, was it Arras, the Isle of Arras, and
Oh no,
which is a lot.
Stornoway.
I was I was Stornoway. Okay, yeah, and which is a lot further north, and but I think you've made the right decision where you are. Been to Butte a few times, and it's a lovely place.
Oh well, and I mean, if ever the angels were involved in guiding people, they really have been with us. I mean, we're 90 minutes from Glasgow, so it's not so far away that there's a big modern city. So, we've got the
Yeah,
best of both worlds. If we need to get something from the city or a taste of city life, I've had enough of city life after 40 years in London. But it's there. A ferry ride and a train ride through some of the most scenic country imaginable. So we've got access to that, but we've also got island life. I mean, this really is the best of both worlds, and we're very, very blessed indeed.
indeed. I mean, I understand where you come from. I mean, we live in a village, not far from Wolverhampton, not far from Birmingham, but it's just far enough out to have that village feel. And we don't actually live in the village; we live on a road out of the village, and we've got all the fields. And if you look out the back window, you can see Cannock Chase in the distance. So I think there's something to be said from not being amongst it all. But there's some people absolutely love being in the thrust of it all, don't they?
Well, I mean, as I say, I'm
And
making those comments after 40 years of
that's
living in
fair enough.
London. And I
We're
think
all
that,
different, and we all want to
well,
do
no, I
different
mean, city life is becoming increasingly.
be some kind of peace of mind. Perhaps are looking for an alternative way of life. Does that mean they're becoming more spiritual, or is it just a case of escaping everyday life, David?
God, you really are an idealist, aren't you? Um, Let me put my cards on the table again. This country is not becoming more spiritual, period. This country is sinking down the tube, and it's taking itself down the tube, period. I do not see any upward energies at work, particularly at the moment. I wish I did. And I don't think and I don't mean you in this, putting a fine gloss on things, isn't it okay anyway, will help us at all. Because that's not happening. Those things are not happening. Now, why things are going in that direction, I think is very complex. But, and I don't think it's a choice. I mean, let's face it. I mean, the UK, it's a group of islands, isn't it, if we're looking at it really? So, it, I don't think really, it's an either or choice. I mean, in London, you have to go to London if you want a sort of big life, because there simply aren't the contacts even now to get where you need to get to if you're not there or in contact with people there. And I think that's a shame on all of us Brits, because London is becoming increasingly violent, increasingly vile, increasingly ugly. Um, and it's an American model, and I think people know I'm not particularly agog at American society anyway. But some of their models do work here, some of their models do not, and that certainly is one that doesn't work here because we're an island, and life is different, our history is different, our culture is different. I wish I did see all these upward energies, Ellen. I'm sorry, is that a terrible thing to say?
Well, no, because um, I do understand. You see, there's always going to be people who are trying to escape and be more spiritual. It doesn't mean to say that everybody in the UK isn't. But I do understand what you're saying. It becomes increasingly dangerous to go into the towns and cities, and especially places like London and Birmingham and Manchester, etc. Unfortunately, and especially if at night time you're going out to the pictures or to the theatre, and it then becomes like a bit of an ordeal of places like that, and that is such a shame that that is happening.
Are you saying that London's becoming like Gotham City, where the Joker shoots down
Something.
Batman's parents? And
No, I don't know whether you know this. I don't know if you
well,
know this, David, but in Nottinghamshire, right, there is a village. It's spelled Gotham. They say Gotham, but it is Gotham, and I've been there quite a few times, and I don't know whether I've seen the Joker there because there's plenty of jokers about it.
yeah, but they all live in London and they make political decisions. That's the trouble with that. Um, yeah, I mean, look, I mean, we both know you can be deeply spiritual in a city as well. Mostly, I think,
Yes,
because
it's,
you and
well,
I have known,
it's
you know,
spelled
you
Gotham
and I
with
have known. Yeah, I mean, you don't have to live in the countryside to be spiritual. Um, I think it's more difficult in a city,
no.
particularly a European city nowadays, because of the pressures on European cities, and the pressures inside European cities. But it doesn't mean you can't be. And I think some of the most spiritual people I've met were actually residents of London. I'd say about 5 years ago, and I didn't keep up with them, so I don't know what happened to them. But certainly, I mean, my first friend when I moved to London was Sir George Trevelyan, um,
Oh
who,
yeah.
of course, was a very big New Ager. a deeply, deeply spiritual man and a man of huge knowledge. So so as I say, everything's a mixed blessing, isn't it? So it's not a we must run away from the cities. If anything, I think we need to take the cities back and say these aren't demilitarized zones, and they aren't just places of commerce. That's what I was getting at with the American model. I mean, the American model seems to be a city really is all about making money, but that's when you start getting into trouble, as far as I see it. If that's all it is, then it's just all right. Then I want my share. How dare you have so much? I want my share. Or is a city more than that? Is it a city? Is a city a place of cultivation and expansion and finding your feet in life, particularly when you're younger? Isn't a city much more than just about greed and commerce? And I just think American culture, and I'm not 100% against it, it doesn't always transpose very well to Europe. And I think that's a perfect example of how it doesn't come here too well. What do you think, Alan?
Yeah, I'm just thinking about something I read on my phone this morning about America. There's a young woman who's in her 20s. She appeared on Strictly Come Dancing a few years ago, apparently. And she's on holiday in America with her boyfriend, partner. And I think, if I remember right, they was going from California to Las Vegas. I had a Jeep, and she wanted to go there again because she'd been on holiday with her parents when she was a child. So that was like reenacting the journey that she did with her parents. And they pulled into one of these roadside areas where you've got like the uh, cafe restaurant, that type of thing. So then there's lots and lots of cars there parked. So they went in to have something to eat and a cup of coffee and what have you. And when they come out, they found that the every window in the Jeep had been smashed, and all their belongings, including their passports and everything, had all been stolen. Um, and they had to drive the vehicle to where, because it was one of these aisles where you pick it up one place, take it up when you get to your journey, take it to their place where you're going. And they had to drive it, all the windows out and everything, to take the vehicle back. And then they'd booked into a hotel. The hotel wouldn't let them in because they got no identity. They couldn't prove who they were. They got nothing, but basically, um, they're stranded in America at the moment while they're waiting for new passports to come over for them to so they can come back home. Fortunately, they got money with them and whatever, and got the credit cards and everything. But that's the damning part about it is there was lots and lots of people around, and nobody stepped in to stop what was going on or anything because everybody was terrified of being shot, I suppose. And that's a terrible indictment of society. Not, in lots of countries, I suppose that can happen. But you know, you just can't. And of course, in America, people know when it's a hired car because what happens is you have the uh, registration plate at the back, but on the front they don't have a registration plate. And most hire companies put the advertisement on there that it's a hire car. So that's sitting targets, aren't they? Not a lot spiritual about that, David.
Curiously, I think there is. I mean, what were we saying last week? We live in an ocean of energies,
Yeah,
and people don't take that on board. That means you're either working with the energies or you're the victim of the energies. It's like magnetism or electricity. these things are at work anyway. You either work with them or you get an electrical shock. Um,
Right.
cities are concentrations of the mnemonic energies, uh, the gnomes, if you like. The energies of materialization, the energies of potential prosperity, the energies of solid material things. So you can work with it in a negative way, you can work with it in a positive way, or you can be its victim. But to ignore it, it's a shame that the West is losing its access to these ideas. I mean, the church sadly, terribly started the blindness that we all have to all of this, and it did it for the worst of all reasons. In the past, certain churches wanted to control everybody, and now it's the corporations. Why can't people just stop wanting to control other people? Get on with your own life. Stop worrying. Stop trying to control other people's lives. But so these ideas have always been there. So let's look at what cities are: concentrations of mnemonic, the demon mammon, to put it that way, or gnomic, if you want the more sort of open or liberal view. Concentrations of materiality and gain and loss and all that sort of thing. So what you should do is focus when you're going into cities, say on the energies of Hercules. Strengthen yourself, strengthen your activities, your protection, and all of that when you are going into those places. And of course, people walk around in this, they swim around, if you like, in this sea of energies, blind to what's going on around them, and it will affect them whether they like it or not. But they don't take the precautions, they don't make the protections, either physical or spiritual, not enough. I mean, if I have one more, if I hear one more story of Brits going over to America thinking it's the promised land and then being shocked when they get robbed, I will start screaming. Why does that blind you to the realities of what happens in a particular place? Grow up. Take responsibility. I'm very sorry to hear what happened to those people, but my honest reaction is grow up. The real terrible thing there is nobody lifting a finger to help. And again, you hit
Yes.
it. You hit it squarely, Alan. They're frightened that they too will be centres of hostility and attack. But that's a sign of where we've all let society go. We've all let it sink. I'll do what I want in the way I want to now. But that's how children think. Do we want to live in a playpen, or do we want to live
That's
in
very
an adult society, trying to respect each other? It's up to us. What do you think, Alan?
no. I understand what you're saying, and I do agree. Um, it's very strange, though, isn't it? Because you get certain areas, certain communities, where they're very close, and they do look out for one another. And then you get other places, well, it's dog eat dog, and that in itself is very strange. Um, and then when something awful happens, people tend to kind of come together when it's like past a certain point that isn't acceptable. Um, you know, on a grand scale, if you go back to when the Berlin Wall came down through pressure of people not wanting to be divided for the East and West Germany, um, it, people power actually created that. I think we need a bit more collective good people power to try and knock some sense into different parts of the world, David.
I see you're most excuse me. I see you're most mindlessly optimistic this morning. I am not. I am not. Um, is it true that people are just swines and bounders? Of course not. I mean, of course you're right, Alan. We need more people power, more sense of community. We need more sense of trust in each other. But I don't think it's always necessarily darkest before the dawn. People don't always come together. I mean, look at human history. is a perfect example about how people don't do that. Um, what tends to happen, I think, is the situation gets so terrible, people have to make a stand against the situation, and sometimes, maybe just sometimes, then they have to work together. Otherwise, it's going to affect them directly.
Yes.
Um, that's when the optimism comes in. But no, I mean, it depends what sort of world we want to live in, Alan. I mean, you know that as well as I do. You know, is spirituality just a nice extra bit, like going to a yoga class, or you know, eating certain sacred vegetables? Is it just that? And there's nothing wrong with health and well-being, and there's nothing wrong in taking those into your lives. But is that just what it is, or is it something else? You know, are we just animals in a jungle, dog eat dog, or is there something more to us? Now, you and I both think there's something more to us. And the minute that's in the equation, that's when optimism can start making a comeback. There are too many people in this world at the minute that don't want others to think that. Because the minute people think there's something more, there's something spiritual, there's something greater to a human life than just consumption, they're much less easy to control. And there are lots of people that want control at the minute. As I say, grow up. You know, why can't you let people just thrive and prosper? And I think if people really were allowed to do that, then you get the type of community on this earth that's never actually existed before, where people genuinely want to look after each other. What do you think, Ellen?
Yeah, so yes, I agree. I was just thinking actually on about communities, and but I used to work years ago in Smethwick, and there's an estate there, and the locals nickname it the jungle. I think that says everything, doesn't it, really? And then in Tipton, there's another area, and it's known as the Lost City. And I tell you something, if you go there, you think you're lost. I tell you. And and there's an area of Warsaw, um, two areas of Warsaw that got really bad reputations. Um, and I find that very strange, and they seem to be almost like next door communities that are, shall we say, better off. Uh, I find society to understand how it formulates. There's an area in Wolverhampton. It's not particularly a bad area, and there's a lot of Polish people who fought in the war for Britain, and they settled there, and it's got a big Polish community, and it's not a bad area actually. And I find it that what do they say? Birds of a feather flock together, and I think there's some truth in that, David.
Alan, it's time for you to fess up. Are you Mr. Big?
But
Are you the daddy of these criminal gangs? It's time the truth came out. Um, yeah, I mean the
is that
sociologists. I mean, the sociologists have studied all of this, and they come up with some interesting findings. People tend to be very tribal, particularly when they feel vulnerable. They feel very, very tribal. And poor areas or criminal areas. I mean, where you get, I mean, ganglands. They're real. That's an alternative
yeah,
version of tribal, isn't it? Really. But they're not silly. They don't attack prosperous areas because those areas have more protections and the police take more interest. So the real reasons why they don't do that, because it's hard. It's much harder, and they tend to prey upon themselves. I mean, isn't this a terrible indictment of life today? Whether we've all allowed that to happen. I'm too busy to notice. I'm too busy. But we're not, are we? I mean, and what's the church doing? Is
right.
always sod all. I mean, how many times are you going to hold mass before you actually do something? And the trouble is forever. No one can be bothered, no one can be asked, but unless we do care a bit more about each other, things are not going to realistically change. They'll adapt. Sometimes it will be a bit brighter over there and sometimes a bit darker in somewhere else, but they won't really change. They won't really change. And isn't that really what we all suspect at the back of our minds these days? Things really need a change for the better if we're all going to survive. What do you think, Evan?
Yeah, as you were saying that, which I can't argue with. I was thinking, what is the role of the church, and by the church I mean all denominations? What is the role of the church in the 21st century? Now, what is their role? Do you feel they've got any significance in society, or is it just a symbol of, okay, you get in the Christian religion, you're christened in a church, you get married in a church, and then when you die, you have a ceremony in the church. Is that it? Is there anything else that a church actually contributes to society? How do you look at that, David?
That's a big question, Alan. And it depends what you mean by church, I suppose. Is it a building where people get things done? I mean, that's certainly what a lot of people think. It's shame on them. It's what a lot of vicars think. Shame on them. And there's nothing wrong with it being a symbol. I wish it was more of a symbol of hope than it actually is. It's not. We've all got to be honest. There's too much history and too much bad history around the church for it to just be taken at face value as a symbol of hope. We all know where it's gone wrong. Any human institution can go wrong. That's neither here nor there. That's just life. But not to make reparations, not to apologise, not to say we screwed up here, guys, and we're going to do better. That's disgraceful. And far too many churches haven't done that, and then refusing to do it because they're the church. I mean, that has to stop, that nonsense. I mean, what I liked about the low churches, what I liked about Unitarians, Quakers, Baptists back in the day, was that they were churches started by ordinary people, by working people, for the benefit of ordinary people. And they would set up Sunday schools. When industrialization started, and the big industrialists were breaking up whole communities, and all that is a matter of history. I'm not saying anything controversial. They were breaking up whole rural communities to get the youngsters to work in their factories. I mean, criminal behaviour, and they would have admitted it back then, and they would have been proud of it. When all that was happening, and alcoholism, and I think drugs is certain scholars are beginning to say yes, that was happening then as well. So the working classes were falling into rack and ruin, basically, because their lives were so terrible. 14-hour shifts, and you were lucky if you had anything to eat. These churches started as an evolutionary stream upwards. So it's never completely dark. Not in our world. Maybe there are some worlds where it is, but not this one. And they'd meet on a Sunday and they'd celebrate life and beauty and truth. And that they used a Christian vocabulary to do that. Our area, old Catholicism, we were part of that. I'm very proud of that. Mainstream Catholicism, the mainstream churches would send in a highly qualified functionary, some administrator, and they'd run the local church, and it would just be for the middle classes. And nothing changed. Nothing was meant to change. Shame on them all. Shame on them all. It was the lower churches that worried about these are people too. These are souls too. These are children of the angels as well. Why aren't people talking about this? They set up Sunday schools, which in those days, of course, wasn't simply about sharing scripture. It was about teaching kids to read and write, because there wasn't nowhere else. The public education of today didn't exist. There were no schools down the road. That was before that happened. So that was the only access they had to any education. So is the church useless? As I say, it depends what you mean. Certainly, if it's becoming irrelevant in our times, who do we blame? Do we blame the people who aren't being served, or do church people blame the church? And if they're not doing that, then they're not really Christian. What do you think, Alan?
Yeah, actually, I was just thinking about what you're saying about the gentry or the people who run these factories going back, 100 years ago or whatever. And I don't know if you've ever seen the film An Inspector Calls with Alistair Sim. There's of this family who own a massive factory and employ that many people in the town, and he starts to systematically um, almost shame each member of the family about they treated a particular employee. You don't really know if it's the same person. One person, the boss sacks the girl because she stands up and says that they wanted more money. Then she got no money, so she goes to this organisation where rich women decide who they will help financially, and one of them's the wife of the guy who sacked her, and she got the girl was pregnant, so we can't help you because you're not married, and then it's basically saying that the son of these people who had sacked her and wouldn't help her was the father of the child, and then when at the end of the film, um, he goes and they found the police station up to complain about him, and he doesn't exist. The policeman doesn't exist, and I just think, well, what a brilliant film, the way it's all put together, and obviously the what they're saying is that this inspector is spirit, and he's come there to teach them all a lesson about how they should behave to people. Um, I, Next time it comes on, I'll have a look who wrote it because I think it's absolutely
J.B. Priestley.
a brilliant.
J.B. Priestley. It's a very famous play. It started as a play.
Oh, right, okay,
All these
yeah,
things start as plays,
but
and then film people who've no imagination decide to use them. Yeah, I mean, it's
but it's
very, very famous and a beautifully written play, Alan.
it's a, it. I mean, the storytelling is absolutely brilliant,
Yeah,
um, and
J.B.
it
Priestley's
really
a
is so.
national legend, of course.
Yes, yes, yeah, I just didn't realise it was him. Yes, yeah, but
Well, we
no,
have
and
a
I
guest,
think
Alan.
that
Dave
hello,
Moriarty. We have a guest, Dave Moriarty.
that's
Nice to see you again.
hello, hello, Dave. I don't for whatever reason it's not coming up on my screen, but it's lovely to have you with us.
So you weren't ignored. We both said hello to you.
No, but just going back to that in spectacles, it's if everybody watched it, it's a wake up call to consequences of how we behave to other people, David.
Oh, I mean, I think you're right, and I think you use the right word. I mean, the idea there is it's spirit. It's spirit turning up and reminding people there's more to life. There's more to life than transactions, financial transactions. There's more to life than me being able to dominate you. I mean, yeah, is that part of life? Yes, but it's not the whole of life. I mean, J.B. Priestley is a master of reminding us all that there are bigger perspectives. And I think that's really what the church is all about in the 20th century. It's a school of memory. It's a school witnessing to the fact that there's a bigger picture, and there are bigger frames of reference. What do you think, Alan?
Well, yes. Um, I mean, in the village, we've got um, two churches. We've got the Methodist Church and we've got the Church of England Church, and um, and they both seem to be fairly well attended. I've never been into the Methodist Church, but I've been to the Church of England Church a few times. And the previous minister vicar there, I knew personally, and I was invited to tea the one time, and we had a really good conversation, and seemed to have quite a lot in common. But the lady retired, and with the rest, and I haven't met the new incumbent, but and they do, and I subscribe to the church magazine once a month that comes through, and they do have quite a lot of different activities on each month, and they do seem to care about people in the area. Um, you know, they have mother and baby things, meetings, and all kinds of different things. So there is a community there. How far that reaches out, I don't know. So going back to different areas, I mean, there are areas where they do try to bring the community together, and where we live, Essington, just seem to have a community spirit. And just going by where we live, we've got brilliant neighbours. Couldn't ask for better neighbours. But it isn't always the case, is it? Um,
Well,
it's
my trouble with
it,
most of the main big churches is that what they mean by serving the community is putting on activities for the people that belong to the church, which, in my view, isn't
yeah,
serving the community. So it's a very narrow thing, and it depends. Oh, aren't vicars, etc., so busy these days? Yeah, aren't we all? Aren't we all? There's no excuse. Again, it depends. Aren't there social workers to do that?
no,
Yes and no. Yes and no. A social worker in Britain does an incredibly complex and pressured job, and we really need to go around giving them group hugs more than just criticising. I used to know a couple in that profession years back, a couple of social workers. I mean, they'd work every hour the angels send. There was never a word of thanks. The slightest thing they got wrong, everyone was jumping on them. No one ever talked about all the things they got right. So, but my
that's
trouble
right.
with social workers, who of course are there as the sort of helping hand of the local community, is that they never deliver the bigger picture. It's not their job. There's to do with helping find financial aid if it's available, or support networks if it's available. It's not to say, look, there's a bigger picture. Don't give up. That is the job of the church. In a sense, the social worker brings the kind of hope I was talking about a minute ago, but they still don't represent the unique witness of a church. There is more to life than all of this.
No,
Don't despair. And that's exactly what the churches aren't doing. I mean, it's good to have a tradition that you're proud of, whether you're a Methodist or a Baptist, that's good. But it's not good if that's all it is. What about now? The prejudices of 100 years ago, they shouldn't have been allowed then, let alone now. Don't be proud of that. What's good and what's bad in your tradition, how can you flower even further? And I can't think of anyone in the church that's saying that. I see lots of LGBT people in the Church of England. I'm hardly likely to criticise that. But, what I do want to give a word of caution. It's not about you and your wonderful personalities. It's about the transcendent. It's about the sacred. It's about the great mystery of life. And yet you make the whole place a lot more fun, I imagine. And you show, that everyone in the church isn't dyed in the wool and worried about the 1950s, which are gone, well and truly gone. So all that's happening and all that's important, but it's still not what a church is about. A church is the only institution in society that witnesses to all of us that there's more than society. And I genuinely can't see much of that happening at the minute. And, at the moment, sadly, the small churches aren't doing that either. So, that's why I think there's such a collective sense of despair and a collective sense of, what's the point? Because nobody's saying, actually, there is a point. What do you think, Alan?
I was just thinking about okay, the Church of England, and it's basically like an institution. But if you think about the way it started, how it was created, was it Henry VIII? He created the church because he wanted to get divorced, and the Catholic Church would not allow it. So he created his own church, so he could get divorced and do whatever he wanted, and it grew from there. So its beginnings, you could argue, were the desire of one man. Um, and it's developed from there, and then obviously it it was a state church, and it still is today a state church. What does that actually mean? A state church? Well, regarding getting married, um, if you any other priest from any other church who marries you, it's not legal until the registrar's been in and witnessed the signatures. There's only Church of England ministers, vicars, who've got the right to marry somebody there and then, and that's it. It's done. Um, is that right? Um, it, uh, is the church controlling people? Because I thought church is supposed to be about helping people, not controlling people. I don't know how you view that one, David.
Well, I mean, the Church of England isn't like an institution, it is an institution. It's also a branch of
Yeah.
government. That's what a state church means. It means it's an official institution of government. Um, it is part and parcel of the parliamentary system in this country. That's why you have the Lords Spiritual. You have bishops sitting in the House of Lords, which is the official second chamber of government in this country. That's what that means. Therefore, every Church of England church technically is a government office. Um, what do governments do? They control people. They control the way they come together, they control the way they leave the world, enter the world, and they give their stamp of approval or not. To my mind, that isn't what a church should really all be about. Are those things important? Yes, they are, but that's not really the main function of a church, because the main function of a church isn't political in that sense. I think it's a bit unfair on Henry VIII. I know that's what you're saying, Alan, but
Hello? I think we've lost. I think we've lost David, or have you lost me? I don't really know, but everything seems to have gone dead, and something strange is happening. Hello,
can you hear
hello.
me, Alan? Can you hear me?
I can't. Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's where we had to take
Something really strange.
precautions.
Yes.
No, no, it's not strange. It's where we had to take precautions recently because we
Sorry,
were.
really strange. You- Hello,
Hello? Yeah, we had
hello,
to take
David.
precautions.
Hello, can
Can
you
you
hear
hear
me?
me? Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, good.
Right, it's not strange. It's where we had to take precautions recently because we were hacked.
Okay.
So it cuts out after a
Gremlins.
certain amount of time.
Is that what happened?
Yeah, because we have to take precautions because nowadays you
Yeah.
might be
And you
targeted, you
can't.
see.
You, but you came up twice on my screen.
Oh, I don't know. I
Very
don't know
strange.
about those things, Alan. I don't know about those things.
No, he did. You were connected twice to me. Really strange.
Yeah,
And
that's weird. That's
yes,
weird.
yeah, yeah, yes. That's what happens. I think it just cut out when if somebody's trying to get into the system. Um,
But as I say, we've had to take precautions because you can't even have a bank holiday in Britain now without the ever growing criminal fraternity trying to rob you of something.
yes. One, it's strange, isn't it, David? One thing, we said before we came on air, and we've actually said it before, that the negative energies, for whatever reason, they don't like us doing the show.
No, there's
Um,
there's pressure
we,
against this show.
yeah, and we both get psychically attacked leading
Yeah,
up to the show every
yeah.
every week. They try their best to either disrupt it or make it so something happens. Either one of us can't do the show, um, especially from my end. Even though um, I have no problem in the week using my computer to talk to anybody, I always do when we're on the air. It's always wanting to cut out. So there's definitely energies at work there, David.
Well, as I say, we live in a sea of energies, and not all of those energies are on our side. I mean, it's just that's part of the life experience we have as human beings.
Yes.
And it's very unwise to ignore that. Too many people nowadays ignore it. To be fair on them, not everybody knows that that's actually the case, or some people wouldn't care if they knew that was the case. But it's very, very, very unwise since these things are active and powerful and all around us all the time. So we need to be cautious.
Yes. Yes, I agree. We do. Well, a very interesting times. Um, we I feel that we're living in a time where, as you say, we have to be cautious. We also have to be strong, and we also have to not deviate from the path that we are taking if it's a good, honest um, path that helps ourselves and other people at the same time. And sometimes it can be you can be tested about being on that path, David.
Oh yeah, like I suppose you could see the world as one gigantic spiritual gym. Sometimes you test yourself, sometimes other people test you. Which curiously leads me back to the Henry VIII thing. I mean, I know we're all told that in school, but it's a bit unfair on Henry VIII. I mean, there was a lot more to it than that. I mean, Protestantism was a major force in cultural discourse across Europe by the time it got here. He sided with them, the people that supported Protestantism in the Church of England, because it was growing anyway, to get his way. That those people that would eventually break away to become the Church of England, he sided with them because he thought he had more leverage with them than he did with the Romans. So it was actually very, very complicated. And some people say, of course, Henry VIII died a Catholic because he was really uncomfortable with the new church. So all I think when it comes to history, it's always wise to dig deeper because you end up with an incredible
Hmm.
series of stories that you get the basic stuff in school. And there's nothing, mind you, they don't teach history now. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's always good to dig deeper because you end up with a clearer and again a bigger picture, which is important. Testing. Certainly, he felt his own faith was being tested, which is interesting. I mean, Henry VIII wasn't necessarily a good man,
No.
but he was a competent head of state, and he was very aware that if a woman, in other words, a daughter, took the throne after him, it made the country vulnerable because what would happen is because we lived in patriarchal societies during that period. Catholic princes from Europe would say, well, why is a woman sat on that throne? Let's invade them, which of course did happen. You know, they tried to invade us, the Armada and all of that sort of stuff, when Elizabeth the First came to
Yes.
the throne. So that did happen, and what he was trying to do was prevent all of that. So he wasn't an entire bounder. I mean, he was a bounder, but not an entire bounder. And he was right. That's how that world worked. Um, Speaking of which, I mean, her courtiers were incredibly interesting because they included the ever wonderful Dr. Jonathan Dee, of course, who wasn't only one of the most advanced mathematicians of his era, he was also a practicing magician who would advise her about these energies
Oh,
and how you work with them and how you must be careful of them. Yes, they test us. Yes, they encourage us. Some of them want to grind us down. Some of them want to kill us. You know, that's part and parcel of the continuum we live in. As I say, what worries me is how many people in the church are really saying that now in a way that will be comprehended by most people on the street. I just don't think they are, Alan. What do you say?
no, no. I, I don't. I never believed in coincidence. I do believe things happen for reasons, and also there is always there's always somebody behind um, things. Okay, one of the things that I suppose always anno- the right word is frustrates me, annoys me, is when, yeah, okay, going back to like you saying about saying the corporate trying to, rule everybody, and they say, well, it's the corporate decision, um, company policy. They hide behind these terms when it is either one person or a group of people, actual people, who decide this. But then it's like that comedy sketch with David Williams, isn't it? The computer says if you've got three heads, two tails, and you bark, it must be true because the computer says. And we become a society that, well, you're wrong because the computer says. And that kind of it does happen, and it is happening, David.
Well, I mean, that takes, I think you're right. I mean, it takes us back into the energies. You know, anyone that wants to rule is working with or oppressed by the energies of Jupiter, Jupiterian energies. So the church is too obsessed with that and it's too governed by them. Jupiter, the king of the gods, the, the, the sovereign energy, the energy that wants people to behave in a particular way. Certainly, the church, in many of its modern aspects, is too dominated by that. The corporations are the most dominated by that at the minute. And of course, it's never one person that makes that decision, it's committees. You know, you have a CEO in a corporation, but you don't, that's one person amongst probably, focus groups and all the rest of it that decide policy. When they don't want policy questioned, that is the problem. Who put you in those decisions and why do you know best? And that's exactly what they don't want. They don't want people thinking those things or behaving in that particular way. But life is life, and you're meant to be providing a service, not being an arm of administration. That is not why you exist as a group of people. Who are these people responsible to? The shareholders. you know, Everything's up for grabs at a shareholders meeting. Even the CEO can be removed. So it's all about, again, a tiny clique, a privileged few that are making all the money. And that is where we have to say there's nothing wrong with that, but it doesn't mean you can rule the rest of us and do whatever you want. What do you think, Alan?
Yeah, I was just thinking how much leeway, how much freedom do vicars, priests, ministers have, excuse me, I'm sorry, in their in their churches, um, uh, are are the powers that be above them come down on them, saying, "Well, you shouldn't do that, you shouldn't do this," and all they're trying to do is help people. Um, it, I would imagine in some of the churches they have to toe the line, and then you get the terrible situation where bad things happen in the church, and the powers that be in the church do a cover up. Um, so just because it's a church does not mean that it's free of any kind of control or corruption.
Well, I mean, they're institutions, so they're given to all the corruptions and weaknesses of an institution. I mean, you're right. I mean, say the Church of England, a local vicar has to work with the church wardens. The church wardens are responsible for the building and all the equipment. So they have to. A local vicar has to work with the parochial church council, the PCC. So how much freedom they've actually got, if they want any freedom, is debatable. And a lot of those people simply want the way things are forever. The free
Yeah,
churches, the low churches, are meant to be a bit better, but I mean, in real terms now, very few of them are. And you don't get to be the minister if you go against the committee, or the committee doesn't like what you're saying. And a minister has to decide nowadays: are they serving Christ, or are they serving the local committee? And 9 times out of 10, it will be the local committee. In terms of when things go wrong, badly wrong, and we all know they do, human institutions can go wrong. It's even worse
yeah,
than you said, Alan. What you'll do is you'll have groups coming together, taking legal advice. How much can anybody actually do? Has the local bishop the power to fire anybody? The answer is probably no. So what will their lawyers be saying? It's better to brush this under the carpet because it's more cost effective. It costs less to brush it under the carpet than actually let it go to court. I mean, this is how corrupt things can actually
yeah.
become if people let them. What do you think?
Yes, you're right. I tell you what I do think. Unfortunately, we're out of time, David. It's had a Jimmy Young way of saying the programme's come to an end. Oh dear. Anyway, please tell everybody how, if they want to get hold of you, David, how they can do that.
That was you being Jimmy Young again. Yeah, I'm on Facebook. It's actually me that runs my own page. I don't have enough money to hire anybody to do my pages, so you will get me on Facebook, X as they call it nowadays, Instagram. I'm on LinkedIn. I was on that new butterfly thing. I can't remember what it's called. I don't think I like that service. I'm probably coming off it, but yeah, I'm readily available. If you want to get me, just try and I'll get back to you as soon as I can.
Okay. And if anybody's interested in getting hold of me, my website is understandingspirit.com. And like David, I'm on the social media sites. And anyway, another Sunday morning. Uh, Thoroughly enjoyed it, David, as we normally do. And hopefully I'll be with you next week. I'm not 100% sure yet because I've got a hospital appointment next Friday, uh, doing some work on my left eye. So I'll see how I'll see how I'm feeling next Sunday. I don't know. I could say a pun, couldn't I? Keep an eye out to see whether I post the show for next week or not. Anyway, right. I wish you all a lovely Sunday, and I hope you all have a good week. God bless. Bye for now.